Hi everyone, this is Rob Watson and this is the overview video summary of the topics that we'll be covering in the 10th lecture for the module Social Media Practice. And what we're going to look at this week is the idea of kind of DIY participation. And participation is an essential concept within kind of social media. It's something which is talked about as a kind of very attractive and very desirable kind of sense of engagement with media. So we want to look at some models of how we can encourage and enhance people's participative practices. So one of the things we'll think about when we're creating our social media campaign is not just how can people view what they're the issues that we're describing and encouraging people to think about, but how can people get involved in the process, in the argument and the debate and the discussion and the sense of change themselves. So what can we do to make our social media platforms and social media activities participative and inclusive of people? We want to look at this in the context of the kind of the communication and media industries that we have that dominate, the models that dominate at the moment. So we're talking about a kind of a corporate hegemony. You know, there's a kind of a pervading sense that there's no alternative to corporate media, and anything that people do outside of the mainstream, on the peripheries, anything that people do for themselves with the kind of DIY aesthetic and alternative aesthetic is somehow marginal and somehow not worthy of our attention, because it's not, doesn't have a business plan. It isn't aimed at kind of a set of a worldview which allows us to fit in. It's about marking out our differences, if you like. So we are working in a world where there's the predominant view about media is a kind of hierarchical approach and or a transactional approach. But I want to put this in the context of what is said about the notion of the public sphere, and that the idea that we need a space within society for which we can deliberate and share and exchange, not just shout at each other, not just declare each other's views to be fake or to be a betrayal, if you like, which social media seems to be enabling as much as the free understanding of discussion and thoughtfulness, which was the optimistic model of social media. So it raises the question about what the quality is of the kind of participative practices that we engage in, and who the people are who engage in these activities. So we need to shift our thinking away from audiences to thinking about publics, thinking about people. So who are the people? You know, it's too often we think audiences, demographics, those kind of phrases. Really what we need to be thinking about is people and what motivates and what drives people in order for them to be able to engage and negotiate and share and define issues and contributions to developing solutions, sustainable solutions to these challenges and problems for themselves. So we'll look at some issues and some examples of DIY and alternative media, which we might want to use as a kind of an aesthetic. We'll look at some of the original principles that the internet was founded on, which is the kind of the well, and the kind of way in which the deprofessionalisation of media is really about encouraging people to do things that they can do based on the resources that they have, rather than kind of waiting for something to come and be put in place which kind of gives them all the answers, if you like. So it's, you know, it's kind of looking towards what people already have and how that can be used effectively and how we can evaluate that. Because what we want to achieve is a kind of sense of civic participation, and people will do that through the networks that they form and the kind of type of activities that they engage in. So we've got some kind of questions about the use of media which help us to reframe this problem, this issue, in terms of there are examples out there of how this is already being done, and what are the principles that those examples are based on, that can point to a very different way of approaching media rather than the top-down, corporate, mainstream, narrow model of media engagement, the transactional approach. You can go through all of these things, the kind of the systems approach, the hypodermic needle model, the viral model, all of these things which are very narrow and take away people's active creative participation in the process of communication themselves. Our starting point is that people are creative and that people are inventive about the media that they use. So a lot to think about in this lecture. We're leading up to the point where once you've got the investigation into the issues that you're covering at the moment in coursework B, once you've got that kind of under wraps, we can move on after Christmas to thinking about how we're going to actually enact this and put this into practice as a kind of quick fire social media campaign, and see what kind of results and how we can evaluate those results. But that's to come. So I'll see you at the lecture.